You can draw and animate this in Procreate. You can draw and animate this fun looking snow globe with a snowman in Procreate. All you have to do is follow this video all the way till the end. I will be guiding you through all the steps. And I'm sure that you can do it because I have developed my You Can Draw This videos especially for people who have no experience drawing or using Procreate. In this tutorial, we'll be using the brushes that are already in the app. Plus, I'll be using one brush that is available in my treasure chest. If you want to use that brush as well, then all you need to do is go to freefromflow.com, sign up, and you'll get access to a treasure chest full of Procreate goodies. Like a brush pack full of free Procreate brushes, I have color palettes, a fun prompt list, and my ebook about color theory. And if you are enjoying these You Can Draw This video tutorials and you want more, then you might want to check out my Patreon page where I share a lot more video tutorials about Procreate, and they range from beginner level to more advanced levels. And don't forget that once you have followed this Procreate tutorial all the way till the end, that you can share your work on Instagram and tag me in the image or in the video. You can either upload the image of the snow globe, or you can make it into a MP4 file, for example, and upload it that way. Just be sure to tag me in the image and not just in the description, because that way I will be able to find your work and perhaps we'll see it in the next You Can Draw This video. So let's not delay, let's pick up our pencil and get started. First of all, our canvas is 2500 by 2500 pixels. And I have created a color palette for you, which you can download through the link in the description. It's totally free. First thing we'll do is add a color to our canvas, to our background. We'll go to the layer menu, that's these two little squares, and click background color. And we'll pick this blue right here. That's the first color in the color palette. Then we'll go to the first layer, layer 1, and we'll pick this light color. And for the brush, we will go to the calligraphy brushes and use the monoline brush. And we will create a circle for our snow globe. So just draw a circle, hold your pen in place, and tap one finger on the screen to let it snap to a perfect circle. And once you have your circle, you can drag in the color like this to fill your circle. And I'll adjust the color drop threshold a little bit to make sure that I don't get a little edge on the outside. At this point, you can change the size of your circle a little bit by going to the arrow, to the move tool here. And you can move your circle around, make it a little bit bigger or smaller. And we can make sure that it's exactly centered. We can do that by going to snapping and turn snapping on here. And then you can see this orange line, and it indicates the center of your canvas. It's the vertical center, and we want it to be a little bit higher than the horizontal center, so we'll move it up a little bit. And I think this is a perfect place. So let's click the arrow again and get out of this menu. Now we are going to do a fun little trick to make this look like transparent glass. We'll do that by adding a layer mask to our layer. So go to the layer menu, click the layer, and then select mask. Now there is a layer mask connected to our layer, and on this layer, as long as it's white, you'll see everything on this layer. But as soon as you start working with black or gray, you'll start masking parts of the circle, and that's what we're going to do. We are going to pick black. You can just double tap here at the bottom of the circle to select pure black, and we'll be using the monoline brush. And we are going to make another circle, but this time we are working on this layer mask. So let's create a circle. And you can see that it's not black actually, but you'll see our background color. So just make a circle, let it snap to a perfect looking circle, and then go to edit shape here at the top. But you can see that it's not black, but it's actually masking that layer our circle layer and you'll see the background color shine through. Just make your circle so that it's just a little bit smaller than our initial circle. And you'll want it to be in the center of that light circle. And then you can just drop in that black to fill that shape on the layer mask. Now this is still not looking like a glass ball, but we are going to change that. We are going to use Gaussian blur on this layer mask. So just make sure that you have your layer mask selected. Then go to the magic wand and use Gaussian blur on the entire layer. Now you can just slide to the right with your pen or finger and blur that layer mask. Let's go for around 21%, something like that. And now we have that nice glass look. Let's just click the magic wand again to get out of here. Next we are going to make that bottom part of our glass ball. I'm not sure what it's called, but let's just create it. We are going to make it on a layer that's on top of our glass ball because it will be covering part of that, well, that bottom part of the glass ball. So let's click the plus for a new layer. We'll still be using the monoline brush, and for the color we will pick this fourth color in the color palette. And first thing we'll do is create an oval here at the bottom. Create an oval, hold your pen in place, and you can use edit shape here at the top to change the shape a bit. I'm going to make the bottom part of the bottom part first. So we'll go down a little bit. And I don't want it to stretch to the outside of the glass bowl. It needs to be, well, just before that edge. I think something like this looks nice. We do want to make sure that it's in the center of our canvas, so we can go to the arrow again, to that move tool. It's still set to snapping, and we can let it snap to the center of the canvas. Now we'll want to create an identical oval that's a little bit smaller than this one. Now we can duplicate this oval by either swiping down with 3 fingers or going to the layer menu and clicking duplicate to duplicate your layer. I will use the 3-finger swipe and click duplicate this way. I will move it up a little bit and we'll want to make it smaller. Do be sure that you have your settings set to uniform. Make it a little bit smaller, and we'll want it to cover that lower part of our snow globe. I want to go a little bit lower. Let me go to the snapping settings and lower the distance. Just want a little bit of a gap there at the edge. Now let's click the arrow again to get out of here. I want to duplicate this oval too. I will duplicate it 2 times, so let's go to the menu here, or you can just use the 3-finger swipe. Let's swipe to the left, click duplicate, and again. These 2 rings will make up the top part of our bottom part. Am I still making sense? But first let's finish that bottom part. I'll turn off these 2 layers that we just created and go back to either this layer here or the one beneath it. Doesn't really matter. You know what? We can actually just squeeze them together and merge them. Now we'll want to create these sides here. And to make sure that this left side will look exactly the same as the right side, we can use the symmetry tool. We'll go to the wrench here, then to canvas, and turn on drawing guide. Now we can go to edit drawing guide and turn on symmetry. Now if you don't want to see this line, we can just turn off the opacity here. Drag it all the way to none. And then we can click done. And that rhymes. Alright, let's create a line here on the left side. Or shall we do the right side? I think the right side is even better. Let's do it here so you can see the left side. See that show up. Let's start here and make a diagonal line to the bottom there. And if you hold your pen in place, you can create this quick shape it'll snap to a perfectly straight line. And now let's fill in these parts, but we'll leave that part open. So let's drag it in and fill those parts. Now let's create that top part that I was talking about. We have these two rings, and I want one of these rings to move up a little bit. So we'll use that top ring here, go to the move tool, and let's drag it up a little bit until it really touches that glass ball. I also want to make it a little bit smaller. Like that. Now let's go and click that arrow, get out of the menu, and let's merge these two layers as well. And we'll want to fill this layer as well, but we do need to connect these two rings first. Let's turn off this layer 3. Oh, well, you can see they're already pretty nicely connected. So let's just drag in the color and fill that ring. And we can turn this one back on. Now we'll want to get rid of these lines up here, but we don't want to accidentally remove any part here. So let's make a selection. We'll go to layer 1, and if we click it, we can click select to make a selection of that circle. Now let's go to layer 3 first, and let's turn off that other layer so we have a better view. Then you can use the eraser. Let's use the monoline brush there. Where is it? Calligraphy, and use the monoline brush for your eraser. And let's go over that edge and erase that part. And we'll do the same for that other layer. We'll turn it back on, click the layer, and erase that part. Now you can turn off the selection by clicking the S-shaped ribbon here at the top. And there we have a nice bottom part of our snow globe. Next, let's add some depth here. Let's go to the layer menu, those two little squares, and go to layer 3. You can see that it says assisted. That means that symmetry is still active here. I don't want that, so I'll click the layer and turn off drawing assist here. And now I'll click it again and turn on alpha lock. Now the pixels on this layer are locked, and we will only be able to paint on the shape that we already created. For our brush, we will go to the airbrushing brushes and use the soft brush. And for our color, we will go to the color palette and pick this brownish color over here. The opacity of this brush is set to 40%. And let's make it a little bit bigger. Let's go for 10%. And let's make the sides of this underside, I'm not sure what it's called, let's make that a little bit darker. So we'll go over that side and this one as well. And since we are using a low opacity brush, you can make multiple strokes, slowly building that up, making that side darker, and that middle part, you'll want that to be a bit lighter. So these sides will have the darkest areas, and in the middle it'll be brighter. Let's make it even brighter. Let's pick this yellow, that third color in the color palette. I'll make the brush a little bit smaller. Let's go for 8%. And let's add a nice highlight here in the center. Next, let's also work on that top part. Let's go to that layer and use alpha lock here as well. So click the layer and select alpha lock. We'll still be using that soft brush. And let's use that bright color. Let's keep using this yellow. And let's lighten it up a little bit, especially here in the center. And let's also use that brownish color, that fifth color here in the color palette, to add a little bit of shadow to these sides, but still keeping it lighter than that bottom part. That's looking good. Now we can move to the inside of our snow globe. First thing we are going to add is some snow to the bottom of our snow globe, but we don't want that snow to really touch the outer edge of our glass because that glass has a certain thickness. So what we are going to do is first we'll make a layer underneath our glass because everything inside that ball, it'll be behind this glass layer. So let's click the plus and drag this layer underneath. And for our brush, we will go to the calligraphy brushes again and use the monoline brush. Now first we are going to decide that thickness of the glass, and we are going to do that by making a circular layer. You can pick whatever color you want. I'll go for a gray. And let's draw a circle. Again, hold your pen in place. Tap one finger on your screen to make it snap to a perfect circle. And you can either use edit shape or you can go to the move tool here by clicking that arrow. And you can move it around, making sure that it's centered. And here you can decide on what should be the thickness of the glass. And I think this is looking good. So I'll keep it like this. I'll click the arrow again to get out of the menu and fill that circle by dragging in the gray. Now we can use this circle to create our snow, and we are going to do that by making a selection of this circle. So click the layer, then click select, and then make a new layer on top of this layer. So click the plus for a new layer. And you can turn off the gray layer that you just created. Now for our brush, I would like to use the fine liner brush that is part of the treasure chest of the brush pack that you can find in the treasure chest. Don't forget, you can go to freefromflow.com to get access to my treasure chest full of Procreate goodies. And yes, it's totally free. Now let's go to the colors and let's pick this color over here, that second color here in the color palette, second row. The opacity of this brush is set to 100%, and for the size, let's go to around 30%. And now we are going to draw in the snow. Let's start at around 1/4 or 1/3 of the height of the snow globe. Let's start about here and make a wobbly line to the other side. Want to go up a little bit here. And now you can drag in the color like this. And you might have to change the color drop threshold a bit to make sure you don't get any, well, weird little edges. I see that it's nicely filled. Now we are going to the layer menu by clicking the two squares and click the plus for another layer. And on this layer, we'll be using this bluish color, this first color in the color palette. And now we are going to start a little bit lower here and make a wobbly line again to the other side. And again, you can drag in the color like this to fill that shape. And now it looks as if our snow globe is filled with a layer of snow. Let's click the S shape ribbon to get out of that selection. Now we are going to spice up the insides of our snow globe a bit more. Let's add some trees. We'll create a new layer for that on top of our snow. So let's click the plus, and for the brush, we'll go back to the calligraphy brushes and use the monoline brush. And for the color, we will use this bright green, that third color in the color palette. And what we are going to create is a rounded triangle, and it doesn't really matter where you place it because we are going to move our tree around. So let's just create it here. Create a rounded, well, like a triangle with rounded corners. Let's drag in the color like this, and you can play around a bit. You can adjust your triangle until it looks like a triangle that you like. I think I like him like this. What we'll do now is go to that layer with our rounded cornered triangle, click that layer and set it to alpha lock. Because that way, remember, we will only be able to paint on that triangle. We will go to the airbrushing brushes again and use the soft brush, and the color will be set to that darker green. And now we are going to add a little bit of shadow to our tree. The opacity is still set to 40% and the size is at 7%. Now let's go over this left side of our tree, just slightly darkening that. But it sure doesn't look like a tree, so let's duplicate this layer. We'll swipe down. No, that's not working. Let's try again. We'll swipe down with 3 fingers. That's better. And let's duplicate this little triangle and we will drag it up. Let's turn off snapping. We just want it to move freely, and we'll make it a little bit smaller. Do again be sure to have it set to uniform, and we'll put it on top of our first triangle. And I also want to distort it a little bit, so we'll click distort. Now you can drag the arrows, the corners, you can drag them a little bit, changing the shape of this triangle. I want to make it a little bit smaller again, so go to uniform and make it smaller. Then click the arrow to get out of the menu and duplicate this one again as well. So we'll swipe down with 3 fingers and click duplicate. And that will be the top of our tree. I think we can distort it again a little bit, so click distort. Change the shape a little bit. And then click the arrow to get out of the menu. Now I'll go back to the layer menu and go back to that bottom triangle. I want to change that a little bit. So click that layer and go to the move tool. And I'll use distort, just like I did before. And change that triangle just a little bit. I want the underside to be a little bit rounded, so you can click warp. And we can make that underside a little bit rounded by dragging this down a little bit. And then click the arrow. Now I want to add a darker shadow to this tree. I want a shadow area just underneath that top part. So we'll still be using the airbrush, the soft brush, but we'll make the brush a little bit smaller. Let's go for 3% and go over this top area to add a dark shadow. You can make multiple strokes, slowly building that up. Let's darken this side a little bit as well. That way, and then we'll do the same thing for the one in the middle. So click that layer, use alpha lock, do be sure to do that. Use alpha lock and go over this area at the top to add a little shadow. We'll go over this left side a little bit as well, darkening that shadow there. Now we also want a tree trunk, so let's make a layer underneath our green part of the tree. So let's click the plus for a new layer and drag that underneath the rest of the tree. For the brush, we will go back to the monoline brush, and for our color we will pick this brown color, this 5th color in the color palette. And let's create a little tree trunk. We'll start about here, go down diagonally a little bit, and make this rounded tree trunk shape. Do be sure to close your shape before you drag in the color to fill it. Now, just like with the other parts of the tree, we will turn on alpha lock for this layer. And for the brush, we will use the airbrushing brush again, the soft brush, and pick that dark color here in the color palette for a shadow on our tree trunk. Let's add a dark shadow just underneath here. And let's also add a little bit of shadow to the sides on both sides. Alright, now we have a lovely looking tree, and we can use this one to create other trees as well. Once you're happy with your tree, you can just merge these layers by pinching them together. And first let's move this tree around because right now it's floating a bit. So let's click the arrow. I'll go to uniform and move it down a little bit. I think this is a nice spot for him. Then click the arrow again and let's add some more trees. I'm going to zoom out a little bit. Let's swipe down with 3 fingers to duplicate our tree layer. Click duplicate. And now we have another tree. Let's make this one a little bit smaller. And it'll be behind our first tree. So it'll have to be on a layer below this tree. So let's go to the layer menu and drag it underneath our first tree. And then let's duplicate this tree. We can just do that by swiping to the left and clicking duplicate. And going to the arrow to the move tool. And let's move this tree to this side. And let's make it a little bit smaller. Like that. Click the arrow again. Now I also want one more tree here on the right side. Let's duplicate our biggest tree again. So we'll go to layer 11, click duplicate, go to the arrow, and let's move it to this side. I'll make this one a little bit smaller as well, like that. Now let's add a little bit of a drop shadow underneath the trees on the snow. So, well, we can just merge all of these trees. Let's squeeze them together. Let's make a new layer underneath it. So I'll click layer 7, click the plus for a new layer so we can add a little shadow. Let's go and use, well, we'll still be using the soft brush. And for the color, let's use this gray, the second color here at the bottom in the color palette. And let's add a little shadow. You can make circular motions underneath the tree to just add a slight shadow. Go underneath each tree. And you can make the brush a little bit smaller. Let's go for a small 2%. For a slightly darker edge just underneath here. And one over here. That's looking better. Now let's add a little snowman to our scene. We'll do that on a separate layer again. Let's go and click the trees first and make a new layer on top for our snowman. We will be using the monoline brush under calligraphy, and for the color we will be using this first color here in the color palette. The base of our snowman will be a circle, so let's draw a circle. Hold your pen in place and tap one finger on the screen to make a perfect circle. And you can use edit shape here at the top to move it around. This will be the body of the snowman. Now let's just drag in the color to fill this circle. And now let's duplicate the circle to create the head of the snowman. Let's swipe down with 3 fingers. No, doesn't want me to. Okay, again, 3 finger swipe, click duplicate. And let's move it up and make it a little bit smaller. and move it to around here. Let's click the arrow to get out of the menu, and now let's use alpha lock on these layers to add some shadow. Let's first click this one, the body, use alpha lock, and let's go to the soft brush under airbrushing to add that shadow. For the color, we'll use this gray. Now let's make a brush a little bit bigger. Let's say 6%. And let's go over that outer edge, adding a slight shadow. And let's do the same for the head. Let's go to that other layer, click it, and use alpha lock. Then we'll use the brush, the soft brush. Let's make it just a little bit smaller, 5%. And let's go over that outer edge as well, giving it a little bit of shape, making it look more rounded. And we'll want the snowman to really look as if it's really in the snow. So let's go to that body layer and remove a little bit of that underside to make it look like it's covered by snow. Let's go to the eraser, and I'll use the fine liner brush as an eraser. It's in the Free From Flow treasure chest. I'll use that as an eraser to remove a little bit of that underside and cover it with snow. Now let's give our snowman a little nose. We can just merge these layers now, the body and the head. Again, if Procreate wants to. Let's click the plus for a new layer to draw a carrot. We'll go to the calligraphy brushes again. Use the monoline brush, and for the color we will use this orange because carrots are orange. Let's make a carrot shape. It's like a triangle, a little bit rounded. And since it's on a new layer, you can actually use the move tool by going to the arrow and move it around and place it wherever you like. I think this looks pretty natural. So let's click the arrow to get out of here. And we can just use the alpha lock technique again by going to the layers, clicking it and using alpha lock. And we can add a little bit of shadow here. So we'll go to the airbrushing brushes again, use the soft brush, and we'll set it to this fourth color here in the color palette. And let's add a slight shadow to the bottom of its nose. Let's make the brush pretty small, 3% perhaps. Let's see. We can just add a little bit of shadow to that underside. Now all it needs is a happy face. We can do that on a new layer by clicking the plus again for a new layer, and let's go to the calligraphy brushes again. Or you know what, I'll use that fine liner brush. Fine liner brush in the Art Float treasure chest, and for the color I'll use this near black color. And let's make the brush a little bit smaller. I'll go for 13%, and let's give it 2 little eyes and a mouth, of course. We'll just make these dots, giving it a smile. And perhaps he needs some buttons. And there we have our cute little snowman. Just one more thing for our snow globe, or actually 2 more things. We're almost done with the snow globe before we can start animating it. First, I'd like to add the reflection of a window on our snow globe. So we'll have to go and make a layer on top of our snow globe layer here. So let's click that and then click the plus for a new layer. And for the color, we will pick this light color again, which we also used for our initial circle. Now we are going to the selection tool to the S-shaped ribbon, and we will set it to rectangle. And we are going to make a rectangular selection for a window. And you can just do it wherever you like. Let's just make a selection here. And that will be our window. Let's drag in the color into the selection. Because when you have a selection active, paint will only end up inside of the selection. Now let's turn off the selection by clicking the S-shaped ribbon again. And now we will use the eraser here. And let's set it to the monoline brush under calligraphy. And the size is set to 40%. And now we are going to make that cross shape in the windows. So we'll start here in the middle, drag a line, hold your pen in place, and tap one finger on the screen to make it perfectly vertical. We'll do the same thing horizontally. Let's start in the middle, drag a line, hold your pen in place, tap one finger on your screen, and we have a window. Now we'll go to the Move tool again by clicking the arrow here. And first thing we'll do is go to Distort. And we are going to drag this right handle, this right corner, we're going to drag it up here. And we'll drag this left corner up a little bit as well. And we'll move this upper right corner just inside of that globe. So these two corners are almost touching the edge. And we'll drag this one down a little bit. Like that. So we have given this window a little bit of perspective, but we want it to curve with the glass. So we'll go to Warp. Now we will drag these parts, making it almost touch that outer edge of the ball. Now you might need to move the corners a little bit as well. We'll drag this down a little bit. So imagine you're wrapping it around this round ball. So you want it to look curvy. And it needs a little bit of guessing. But when you got something like this, when the window shape, that cross is well rounded like this, then you're good. Then we can just click the arrow and we have a nice window shape here. Still not looking natural. We still need to fix this. We can go to the layer menu, click that layer, and then use mask. Now we are going to use the airbrush, the soft brush. So let's go to airbrushing again. And we are going to use it to make this reflection look more transparent. And we'll want it to be pure black, our color. And the brush needs to be pretty big. Let's go for 13%. And let's go over this reflection, making mostly that left and the lower part more transparent. But you can leave a part of it, like that right side, you can leave that a bit more opaque. I think this is looking good. Now for a final touch for our snow globe, we need a shadow underneath it. That will make it look more realistic. So let's create a layer underneath our snow globe. Let's click the plus for a new layer. And you can see that we're underneath that underside of the snow globe. We'll still be using the soft brush. And for the color, we will use this dark gray, a bluish dark gray. The opacity of the brush is still at 40%. And let's set the size to around 7%. And now let's go over this underside with these horizontal, a little bit rounded strokes, slowly building up that shadow until you have something like this. Now we can go to the magic wand, use Gaussian blur, set it to layer, and drag your pen to the right to slightly blur this shadow. I'll go for around 16%. Now let's click the magic wand again and let's add a slightly darker shadow just underneath that underside. And I'm I'm turning my canvas because it's easier to make strokes this way for me in any case, so just move it any way you please. Let's make the brush a little bit smaller. I'll go for something like 2%. And let's just go directly underneath that underside, making a very thin shadow area there. That's the shadow directly under that stand, if that's what it's called. Until you have something like this, then I'll just turn it around. I think it's looking good. Now for the final part, you're almost there. Let's go and animate our snow globe. Let's first go to the layer menu. You can see that we have a lot of layers, and for our animation we really want to reduce the amount of layers, because otherwise you'll get into trouble when you want to create an animation, because you'll end up with even more layers than this. So let's start merging layers. First of all, we can merge all the layers of the snow globe of the outside. So that's the stand, that's the shadow, and that's the glass. So let's merge these by pinching them together. And then we have the insides of the snow globe. We can merge those together as well. So let's pinch these all together. So now we have a layer for the snow globe, we have a layer for what's inside, and we have this weird gray circle. But we have that weird gray circle for a reason, because remember, that's the inside of our snow globe. That's what decided that thickness of the glass, and we will need that when adding snow to our globe. We don't want that snow to go through our glass, it needs to stay inside. But let's just turn it off for now, and let's group these layers. We'll swipe to the right on the layers and select group. Let's close it for now, and let's go to the wrench, and when you're in canvas you can actually turn off drawing guide because we're really not using that. And here you can turn on animation assist. And that will make this little bar pop up. Let's click the wrench to close that window. Here you have a little bar. And in this bar you will see every frame of your animation. And each frame is either a layer or a group of layers. So now that we have grouped our layers, it'll be one frame, but if you wouldn't group them, then they would all be frames. So this is our first frame, and let's add some snow to our first frame. Let's open our group and let's click layer 6 with our friendly snowman and the trees on it. And let's click the plus for a new layer. This is where we will add our snow. And we will create the snow by going to elements and use the driven snow brush. It is set to 100% opacity and the size is at 50%. And for our color, let's pick this color that we also used for the snow. And now before we start creating snow, let's go to the layer menu, go to that circle, that weird gray circle, click it and use select. Now there is this selection of the inside of the globe, and we will only be able to paint inside of that selection. Let's go to layer 5, which will have our snow, and let's start adding snow to our snow globe. Like this. To make our snow move, to make it fall, we are going to make a new group. Let's close the group, swipe to the left and click duplicate. Now we have a second frame for our animation. Let's turn off the selection, by the way, by clicking the S-shaped ribbon. And now here we are going to move the snow a little bit. So go to the snow layer, then go to the move tool. Let's set it to uniform, and let's move the snow a little bit to the right and a little bit downwards. When you see snow falling, it's usually in a bit like a zigzag pattern. So we won't just go down, but we'll go to the side a little bit. Like that. Then click the move tool again to get out of there, and you can see here, right here on this edge, that some snow is trying to escape from our glass. We don't want that. So let's go to the layer menu. Let's make a selection again of our weird gray circle. Let's click select. Now let's go to the layer menu again, and when you click layer 5 and use mask, you will see that we have an automatic selection, an automatic mask of that circle. So whatever is black, that will be masked, and whatever is white won't be masked. So that way, no snow will end up outside of our globe. Then click the S-shaped ribbon again to get out of the selection. And you can actually click the layer with the snow, then use the brush and add a little bit of extra snow to the top. And now it's time to create another frame. So let's close the group, slide to the left and click duplicate. And here we'll move the snow again. So let's click layer 5, go to the move tool, and this time we'll move it to the left a little bit and downwards. Then click the move tool again. But now that we moved our layer, we have actually also moved the layer mask. So again, that snow will try to escape from our globe. So we'll have to make a new layer mask. Click the layer mask, swipe to the left, then click delete, and then make a new selection of that. Well, that gray circle again. So click the layer, click select, go to the layer menu again, click layer 5 and use mask. And again, while clicking layer 5, going to your brush, you can add a little bit of snow to the top. Let's repeat the process. Let's click the S-shaped ribbon, get out of there. Let's duplicate our group. And let's move the snow again. So we'll go to layer 5, click the arrow, the move tool, and now we will go to the right side again and downwards. Then click the arrow, go to the layer menu, and we will delete the layer mask again by swiping to the left, clicking delete, making a selection of the gray circle, click the layer, use select, go back to layer 5, click it and use mask. Now let's click layer 5 again. Now while we want new snow to end up at the top, we also want, well, the excessive snow to be removed at the bottom. So for instance, let's remove some snow here, which is going too low. And let's use the brush to add a little bit more snow at the top. Let's check our animation. Let's see what it's looking like so far. Let's click play here. And it's going super fast. You can go to settings and then go to frames per second and turn it down to, for instance, 3 frames per second. Now let's go to the layers again. Let's close this group, swipe to the left and duplicate it. We'll go to the layer with the snow again, layer 5, go to the move tool, and this time we'll move it downwards to the left again. And I will have to fix the layer mask again. Let's click the arrow first, then go to the layers, click layer mask, swipe to the left and click delete. Then we'll go to the gray layer again, make a selection by clicking it, clicking select, then go to layer 5, click that and use mask again. Now we'll go to layer 5, click that, use the eraser and erase the parts that are going down too far, and you can use the brush to add a little bit of extra snow at the top. Now let's click the S-shaped ribbon to get out of the menu and let's check the animation again. That's looking like some cute snow. You can continue adding as many frames as you like, well, until your iPad tells you that it's really enough, that you really can't move forward anymore. But you can continue adding more frames, adding more snow, that's totally up to you. But once you're finished with your animation, you can go to the wrench, then go to share, and for instance use animated MP4 to turn it into a little video. Let me just turn it back on. And there you have it. Here's your animated snow globe. I'm so proud that you followed the entire tutorial. And I'm looking forward to seeing your result on Instagram. If you have enjoyed following this tutorial, then do be sure to check out my other You Can Draw This video tutorials, or if you want even more, go and check out my Patreon page. Thank you for watching.